Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. I would say hit like and subscribe, but it's Sunday morning, so of course we're going to be talking about some slightly more controversial topics. Um, I was watching some stuff on YouTube that got me thinking just about like some of the literary demands that are made about wanting to have more diversity, inclusion, and the paradoxes this creates for publishers and writers. Because on one hand, there's the ask for, we want to have more characters that are more reflective of the population, yada, yada, yada. But also, you have to be a member of one of those groups in order to be able to portray them properly. Otherwise, you're committing some sort of appropriation offense. And so, if you want to have a book that's got a big, broad, diverse cast, somehow you're going to need to have multiple writers or, at the bare minimum, I guess maybe pay consultants to give you pointers on, like letting you know exactly what it's like to be person X as a teenager before you write down something about their feelings, all of which reflects this terrible, terrible lack of empathy that we're all being encouraged to box ourselves into when it comes to how we perceive each other. Um, Empathy is the ability to relate to somebody and find the commonalities between yourself and them and put yourself in their shoes. Will you always be able to accurately recreate what somebody else is thinking and feeling? No. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't at least try to have some degree of insight. A thing I've cited for years, going back before the controversy of it all kind of exploded, before, Chris Rock had come out on the Oscars or whatever that was, and first uttered the words "Black Lives Matter" on national television. But I've long said part of why I can like relate to some of the things that I hear about the black experience, about being followed around and harassed in public, and everyone like automatically assuming you're up to no good. Um, as a person of extreme height and size, I do get a little bit of that vibe. To some degree, I even wonder if somewhat of what the thing that black men in particular are experiencing might as much just be the sorts of things that any large dude is going to suffer from, but because of culture and a bunch of other things, they're defaulting to assuming it's because of their skin color. I don't know about that. It's just a theory. But if I go to a Best Buy, I get pestered a lot by people working there asking like, oh, are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you? And trying to keep tabs on me. If I hang around somewhere where people aren't used to me for a long period of time, like I don't think I could just go into a Starbucks and chill out for an hour without buying anything, without somebody wondering what's up. Uh, whereas like if you're a girl, I remember having this conversation with a coworker who was a younger black lady, about that incident about the two guys who had been arrested at the Starbucks. And she was confused because she was like, I've spent time in Starbucks before without buying anything, and no one ever harassed me. And it's like, yeah, and it's not necessarily because of the skin color thing, but it's because large dude is considered just to generally be ominous and a threat. But regardless of where that line is, because I have experienced that myself, I can imagine what it is like to be, have that notched up a little bit because people are suspicious of me because of ancestry or whatever the fucking bullshit thing is. The ability to role play as somebody of another race. Yeah, if you got a group of white kids and Hispanic kids playing together, and they're playing a game set in East Asia and Japan or something, and they're all playing samurai. No, they're not gonna like accurately portray what it was like to be a Japanese man or woman back in the 1600s. That's impossible. Does that mean they shouldn't get to do that? Similarly, as I was saying, if you have like this call to have more diversified games, but you're not supposed to portray something that you are not, what are the DMs and game masters supposed to do with that? If I wanted to run, like the modern presentation of Faerun from 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, where like they make a point of having a more like diverse lot of NPCs, and like how am I supposed to be able to accurately portray a black NPC in Forgotten Realms if I myself am not black? Or how am I supposed to portray the woman NPCs if I myself am not a woman? And so on and so forth. You can only have one DM at a time. I know some people experiment with like co-DMing and stuff, but generally speaking, it's like it ultimately it does kind of default to like one person is the keystone who's making the decisions of like, yes, this happens, no, that doesn't happen, or like this is the stuff that's going on in the setting that the characters are to encounter. If you're only allowed to portray yourself, then that will create like more ethnically purist type settings. Because like as a white person, if I'm trying to run a fantasy role-playing game, I'm forced to have to set it in a European style setting, and I guess all my NPCs have to be white, and my own gender, and so on and so forth. Like that's just dysfunctional. It could be because of a product of, spending a lot of time in theater classes during my school years. But philosophically speaking, I'm a bit of a theater purist, in which a performer is not the character that they're performing. Not just even the limitations of who's actually available and talented enough to act a role. Like you don't know what kind of layer of performance that is added to the overall presentation of whatever theatrical experience you're trying to create. Different actors bring different things, kind of a thing. These are unrealistic suggestions, obviously, but like, what if Idris Elba was cast to play General George Washington in a movie about the American Revolution? Is that photo accurate to the past? No. But like, what if he brings some sort of special nuance, or even just the contextualization of seeing a black George Washington even? Like, what if that adds something to the performance that's worthwhile and enriches the audience? But if we have to have everything be a photorealistic representation of the past, you can't do that. What if Tilda Swinton got cast to play Shaka Zulu? A photorealistic depiction? No. Is she likely to really bring anything to that's really worthwhile? In reality, no, but you never know. Just the contrast, if it's being used to purposely kind of pop the audience out of their immersion. I mean, like there might be some purpose to that theatrically. That wouldn't at all be going back in time and taking anything from the actual Shaka Zulu. But like, we live in a real literal age. People read everything very literally. Everything they see is taken very literally by a large portion of people. Hopefully, because of my own weirdness and point of view, I would assume that my audience is a little filtered, so that like this doesn't actually apply probably to you watching this right now. But there's some people out there, let's just say, who just to take everything to be like they see from film and television or other kinds of entertainment to be like literal representation of the truth, and kind of forget that they're just watching a play. If I were to take, my Kindred of the Edge of the Ebony Kingdom, or Kindred of the East books, and I wanted to run a campaign set in that, am I even allowed to do that at all? Say you have the hypothetical, idealized, perfectly representational group of players. You got 5 people. You're in North America, so 3 of them are white, 1's black, 1's Hispanic. We'll leave gender and sexuality out. We're just going to look at it just on their ethnic background. What game can you play? Can you play any kind of fantasy game? What are you supposed to do if you're setting, your game in RPG Pundit's Lion and Dragon and using his War of the Roses setting book? What's the Hispanic player and the black player supposed to play? If they're only allowed to play themselves, then you're having to come up with some convoluted reason of like what they're doing there. Is your Hispanic player going to be playing like a native Mesoamerican from Central America prior to European contact? or would they play a Spaniard? And if you're trying to do an accurate depiction of medieval England, exactly what is your black player doing there to play? Or you're just kind of fudging it and just saying there's always been a little tiny amount of black people in Europe, kind of like how a lot of stuff you see on modern British television. You're trying to just establish, oh no, you've just always been a minority here, which I'm not necessarily sure is a better message or not. So yeah, or do they play white characters because it's a white setting? If you take that exact same group, and then you're going to run a Vampire the Masquerade, and you're going to use a Kindred of the Ebony Kingdom, what do they play? Are the white players allowed to play black vampires? Is the Hispanic player allowed to play black vampires? Is only the black player allowed to play black vampires? And then why even set it in that part of the world if the player character group is not allowed to reflect that portion of the world in terms of what characters they're portraying? Same thing, that same group. You're going to use ninjas and super spies. You're going to do some Wuxia, Hong Kong, disciples of the 36th chamber, kung fu, executioners for Shaolin kind of genre. A role-playing game where it's all just a bunch of kung fu fighting and stuff at mystic temples and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the role-playing game basically, and you're going to use ninjas and super spies, and it's going to be set in China, but your player character group doesn't have a single East Asian in the group. Are they just not allowed to play that at all? Or are they going to have to come up with weird excuses as to why they're in this East Asian setting that has no East Asian NPCs because the DM is not East Asian and can't portray East Asians, and all their characters are not East Asian, even though they're doing East Asian tropes. What exactly, the way some of this I don't know, it's separate but equal role-playing game spaces serve anybody well, kind of a thing. You're ultimately, because of the demographics of whatever region you're in, you're kind of automatically going to be setting up certain settings and books to fail because they're never going to have the same level of audience as games that are written for people of the larger demographic. If we're going to do this where people are only allowed to play and watch and perform and involve themselves with things that are specific to their narrow ancestral demographic. Also the fact, especially speaking for North Americans, our bloodlines are so tangled after all these centuries of cohabitation and interbreeding. Exactly, can anyone say part of the whole thing why we even have this idea of there's a white race and a black race is because we're a bunch of different Europeans all mixed together now, so we can't really tell who's Italian and who's Polish and who's Irish. And same thing with the Africans that were brought here or that have immigrated since. They're intermixed with each other, so it's hard to differentiate who's the Nigerians and who are from Ghana and that kind of a thing. If your biggest ethnic chunk, according to a DNA test, is only 30% something, does that make you a member of that thing? Kind of a thing. Already I don't know. It all seems like it's just setting everything up for failure, by not thinking through the demands. Diversity is supposed to be additive. It's not subtractive. It's supposed to be in addition to, because in reality we should have an infinite number of entertainment possibilities. In the end, it shouldn't matter who's playing what. Also, since these are fictional games, if you want to come up with an excuse to play somebody of an unusual ethnic background in a game that is set in a part of the world that is not indicative of people of that background, if you want to go to the extra trouble to come up with that character background to justify and explain why the hell they're there, go for it. That's on you. I'm personally just try to keep things simple myself. it's good to have multiple points of view. It's good to have a broad array of options in terms of storytelling and mythologies to draw on. How many variants of the exact same Germano-English fantasy world that's, a dash of Tolkien, a dash of Norse, a dash of Prussian, just doing the 100 Years' War type setting again, or a War of the Roses setting again, or telling, the Legends of Ragnarok. How many settings are going to have elves instead of there's a big planet. I mean, there's lots of other creatures from mythology from all around the place that could be being used as interesting creatures in a fantasy setting. But it's always elves, which are, distinctly, Germanic, Scandinavian kind of myth. But, hey, let's just, I don't know. The line that's kind of evolving to try to, straddle these competing demands seems to just be leaving us with, a Eurocentric form of diversity, where we're going to continue to get the established European-based settings that are modeled on European societies. But now there's going to be ghettos in those settings to make sure that there's little small amounts of people who look like other people that are living in this land. And we're just not even going to address and make an African setting or an East Asian setting anymore. I mean, in the end, if this is the situation we're left in, where the only way we're allowed to have these things is if somebody who is of those things makes those things, and it would be really handy if some black writers would step up and make a badass African-based role-playing game that hopefully is not a little too preachy. Same thing, if we can't have kung fu and samurai in our games unless a Japanese or a Chinese person has written them, then someone's gonna have to fucking step up and actually go ahead and do it. As a guarantee automatically that you're gonna get published? No, just like anybody. Publishers aren't just gonna greenlight any random unsolicited script. But if no one bothers to write the fucking thing, it's definitely not gonna exist. And plus also we live in an age where self-publishing is way easier. You don't actually even need to do all the Kickstarter stuff. At times I just kind of help but wonder if that's just a little bit of a scam. But that's, I don't know, I'm perhaps suspicious of people's motivations when it comes to money. Is there a conclusion to any of this? No. I'm just kind of trying to just muddle through the logic of this. I do know that not all my audience is just a bunch of honky-ass crackers, so feel free, if you're not one of them, to leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm, not really trying to dictate one way or the other how things should be. Things should be always. I just find that because of the way this stuff is being demanded at the top levels of media, it's painting people into just these really just impossible corners. And also, as always, bringing focus to it makes it worse. Are all white people racist? Yes, insofar that all human beings are racist. As long as we have eyes and language, we will have the ability to see differences in each other and then describe them. That's always going to be a part of us. I still, I guess, go with Morgan Freeman from several years ago, in that it's always going to be there. It's just background noise. You just got to learn to ignore it. Ignore it in yourself as well as ignore it in others. And don't really bring it up unless it's absolutely necessary. If there's no reason for you to know the skin color of a person, then it doesn't need to be described. If you're news reporting about a crime happened today, you can just say, a man did something. We don't need to know if they're white or black or Hispanic or, whatever. Unless they actively need your help to find them, in which case a physical description could be handy. But if most of our culture is just treating people in the most neutral of terms possible, then over time one might think that we would kind of ease back on this constant fretting over how much melanin we have on our skin, and like, learn to grow up a little goddamn bit. You know, whether or not we like it, this planet has been hardwired together electronically and with commercial trade routes. And even if we did have some big, terrible war or apocalyptic event, we're not going to fall all the way back to the Stone Age. If there are survivors, they're going to remember all sorts of stuff is at least possible, and we'll be able to refigure it out. If not, enough survivors will actually know how to do those things on their own without having to refigure it out in the first place. Like all sorts of like, we're never gonna like excise firearms from the human technological kit now that they've been introduced. Our boat building technology, our ability to navigate, agriculture, like all, you know, like we all sit on like a body of knowledge that's not gonna disappear unless all of us disappear. So we're kind of stuck with having to like learn to live with each other, even if we weren't doing all the stuff of trying to like homogenize all of our cities through immigration. So like just everywhere you go in the world, whatever city you land in is going to look the same and have the same restaurants and the same overall mixture of people. Even if we weren't doing that, we've already, in a way, just because of all the international trade and travel, we've broken the actual meaning of diversity as human strength. The thing that makes the strength, the positive boon of having a bunch of different types of humans spread across the planet is so that we're less likely to all be wiped out by the same disease vector. And now that we've contaminated each other to such a degree around the planet with all this movement and travel, that's kind of thrown out the window. So, like, you know, we're on a path towards basically becoming like a race of gray-skinned pseudo-Muslims, is basically where we're going to be in 500 years. And I guess we're just kind of stuck in that middle phase of transition where, you know, like all the ancient bloodshed and brutality and grudges of ancient history haven't entirely been like gotten out of our system. I don't know. This is probably a lousy YouTube video. I'm not really sure if it has much of a point. It just, you know, I don't know. It's like I said, I was just seeing the thing about, like, you know, like, yeah, there's like, if you're going to have a TV show with a diverse cast, well, you can't just have one screenwriter. Like, now you have to have a diverse writer's room. And so, like, when you take that same logic, and if you filter that all the way down to those of us who are actually trying to run these games, how are we supposed to have a diverse cast of characters that we're presenting as DMs if we're only allowed to run and portray characters that are basically identical to us? I guess is the core question here still. And that, you know, like, it's just kind of just ended up painted up that instead of actually having a real larger breadth of diversity in terms of the kinds of games we have, instead we've, you know, just recreated America's demographic balance within our fantasy worlds. You know, Forgotten Realms is still 70% white, 13% black, and a little mixture of Asians and pseudo-Latinos, fantasy Latins, Latin X because they have mutant powers of the mind and laser vision, all that kind of shit. I don't know. Like, we're kind of painted in a corner on that front, and like, the only real answer is to just learn to ignore it. Racial bias is, unfortunately, for good or ill, something of a default setting. It's a neutral setting. Freaking out about it to the degree we are is akin to freaking out to the amount of nitrogen in our atmosphere. It's just kind of there. It has caused trouble and strife in the past, and since we're trying to run large-scale nation-state civilizations, and we don't want them constantly like being torn apart by ethnic tribalism, then yeah, like certain amounts of you know, propagandized cultural manipulation needs to be done to try to, you know, get everyone to peacefully cohabitate. We're not going to do that by constantly monitoring each other for offense and for you know, like, how dare you, you know, have a white guy with dreadlocks kind of shit. you know, we're just going to have to learn to ignore it as much as we can and just try not to bring it up, which is an ironic thing to say after a 25-minute long video where I'm talking about the subject and bringing light to it and emphasizing it. So anyway, I don't know, try not to be so racist today when you're out there, America, and to the rest of the world, I'm fucking sorry. I'm sorry!